has the West supplied adequate kit and reinforcement of the ammunition and other supplies? And if they have, then and Ukraine has taken measure of this and decided it's time to counterattack, then I have confidence in their decisions. This is a military that has been very savvy so far in fighting the Russians with what we have given them. So I think we need to pay attention to what they're saying and
Yes.
what they're doing around here.
Let's invite you all into our daily briefing room now, where we can speak to one of our leading tactical and strategic minds with experience high up in military command. General Philip Breedlove joins us, retired four-star general, a former commander of U.S. European forces, as well as the 17th Supreme Allied Commander Europe of NATO. Good afternoon to you, General.
How are you today?
I'm well, and good of you to join us here on the programme. So we're seeing these reports now of a big counter-offensive by Ukraine's forces underway. What's your understanding of what's going on? And tell us what you can about its significance, General.
Well, we've been hearing for some time about this big counteroffensive, and I think the Ukrainians are doing it in the manner that they can. And that is largely prescribed and, in my opinion, wholly prescribed by how much support the West is giving them in order to accomplish that. Nations are training, like the UK, and giving equipment. Other nations are giving equipment. But are we giving them what they need when they need it, at the level they need it, to pull off a counteroffensive? And I think that has a lot to do with how we're seeing this counteroffensive roll out.
Right. Well, let's come to that question of, are they equipped and able to take on a huge mission of the kind this seems to be? But first, the significance of this operation, General. I mean, we're talking about an attempt to retake territory around the city of Kherson. And that is important, is it not, as a part of an effort to stop Russia linking up Crimea with the Donbass and just taking control, all-powerful control of the south?
It's incredibly important. This is a very strategic area. Since Russia was defeated soundly in the north, they've now concentrated on this piece in the south. And as you very aptly described, separating Russia from Crimea, retaking the quote-unquote land bridge, is very strategically important. The water supply to Crimea is controlled there. The movement of goods are there. Russia becomes completely dependent again on the Kerch Bridge, which could be taken down ostensibly. And so this is a very important piece of terrain and a very important offensive for Ukraine to engender.
It's right, isn't it, General, that until quite recently, Ukraine was suggesting they didn't have the capacity to launch a major counteroffensive. Does that seem to you now to have been a bit of a feint, a bluff?
Well, I don't have intimate knowledge of exactly what they have. Here's what I do believe. The Ukrainian military has done a great job of fighting the Russians when they have the right kit at the right place at the right time. And so the question now is, has the West supplied adequate kit and reinforcement of the ammunition and other supplies? And if they have, then, and Ukraine has taken measure of this and decided it's time to counterattack, then I have confidence in their decisions. This is a military that has been very savvy so far in fighting the Russians with what we have given them. So I think we need to pay attention to what they're saying and what they're doing around here.
So is it reasonable then to hope that this latest phase of the war could lead to something of a breakthrough for Ukraine, that Russia could be set back, driven back in a way that would be important for the course of the conflict? Because until now we've been talking about this war heading for something of a deadlock, a stalemate, with both sides entrenched into their positions, maybe for a considerable time. Do you see it as possible? I know, as you say to us, you don't have a clear idea, how could you, of the resources, all the resources available to the Ukrainian military. But is it reasonable to hope and imagine that Ukraine could, well, effectively get the upper hand here?
Well, I absolutely believe if we have given them adequate equipment, again, at the right place at the right time, they can do it. I am completely confident that the Ukrainian military could do that. The real question is, has the West done its part? And I think that you mentioned about how we believe that maybe this is going to a stalemate or a deadlock. That's exactly what Russia wants us to think. They want to survive to get into the winter where they can try to separate voting publics from their governments in the West with this cold, long winter and settle in. And there are appeasers in the West. There are appeasers in my country right now who are working on trying to find a peace at any cost. And I would like to sort of qualify that cost. That cost will be borne by Ukraine. And so there are those who want to get to a stop now, no matter that would cement in place these territories for the Russians. And that's exactly what Russia wants. So I think
yeah.
we need to stay the course.
So as one who wishes to, as it were, confront and argue and engage with those you call the appeasers, are you satisfied from what we've all seen of the supply of weapons from Ukraine's allies, chiefly America, the United Kingdom, very much in the forefront of all that, and some of the Eastern European countries too, keen to supply Ukraine as far as possible? Are you happy that the supply of those vital munitions is at anything like the kind of level that would be needed for Ukraine to fulfill its ambitions?
Well, before I have spears thrown at me, let's say three things. We appreciate and are happy about what our governments are giving. In America, we are appreciative and happy about what the Congress has funded and set forward in its law and funding. And we are appreciative and thankful to the American people whose support to Ukraine is growing, but we are completely thankful and appreciative to what the American taxpayers, and I'm sure you in UK are thankful for what your taxpayers have done. But now let's just be very straightforward. All we ever talk about is what we've given. We hardly ever even discuss what is required. It's hard to determine what's required when you don't know what your objectives are. So far in the West, we've had these squishy words like we want a free, independent, sovereign, and viable Ukraine. None of those translate well to military requirements. For a while, our leaders were talking about winning and about defeating. And now these are things where we can concretely begin to measure what's required. But in these more squishy political words, we don't know what the requirement is. So even though we're happy about what's being given, if you can't measure that by the bottom of the fraction to determine what is required, you don't know whether you're doing well or not. Does that make sense to you?
It does, and appreciate you sharing those thoughts with us. Thank you for joining us in our briefing room on the program today. That's General Philip Breedlove, former Supreme Allied Commander, Europe of NATO.